What's up, everybody? It's your favorite I Got a Bad Feeling About This favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Raiden Combiner set from Takara. Their masterpiece MPG line, made up of 6 bots that have all been on loan to me from John P. since the first one came out. Let's take a minute and make some noise for John P. Not only was it brave of him, but it was also very selfless of him to send it my way and let me hold on to it for so long. In the midst of him dealing with multiple things, including personal matters that I won't divulge here, but life is complicated, is it not? So I really appreciate the opportunity. But I have a feeling that I have yet to see the end of my work being cut out for me with this set. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get it started like the Black Eyed Peas. And we're going to start with combination. We'll get through the combine mode and then we'll get into accessories. All right, let's try it. All right, so we're going to start with this. It's basically you combine 2 different sets and then you combine them together. So there's rails on the opposite side of the legs, and you just slide in 1. Rails on the opposite sides of the legs, slide in 2. So far, so good. So the headpiece was separate. It's a kind of a pain. Just make sure that it's sitting long ways and make sure that the 2 rails are facing towards the front. And then you just have to pull out the crest, spin it 180, and then flip out these flaps here, which I'll show here in a minute. You had to have them folded in order to get access to these panels. And once you have access to those panels, these arms will slide down rails there as well. Side 1. And I will tell you, I think that this bot here is the weakest link. But more on that later. Let me get a little bit more of an angle. All right. Oh, that came all apart. Let me try to fix that. We'll get back to it. So, then you have this channel here. And on the pelvis, and it's going to be a bear to get to, there's a groove on the blue on the pelvis that has to slide into it. I'm going to try it. But I am concerned about it knocking off a bunch of stuff. So let's just... There we go. I'll get it cleaned up. We'll take a look at it. So, let's talk about the figure. And let me tell you something. This is key. As we move through this figure, I am not going to clean anything up. And I'm going to take a picture of its state at the end for the final thoughts. So, we have the head sculpt. And I actually think it's quite nice. I'll let you look at that there for a bit. Nice paint, silver paint on the crest and on the face. It's yellow paint on the eyes, which isn't the brightest, but it's fine. I like the kind of speakers on the side of his ears. I like the wings that fold out. I think all that stuff looks good. The head itself is on a hinge swivel. You get limited up, limited down, and a swivel. That's what you get. All right. These crests here fold out. You can also fold them in if you if you so desire. No, I'm not going to make any changes. I'm just going to, the show must go on, in the words of Freddie Mercury. Like, I'm just not going to alter how this thing works. I want you to see the state that this thing is in. Now, the shoulders. So I've messed with this a bit. And I'm going to show you what happens. You see that little hook there? That has a tendency to come unlatched. There it is latched on the opposite side. But I'll show you after we look at the shoulders that it won't make much difference. They'll both probably become unlatched. So I'm not going to make the effort to change it. I also don't have this thing pushed in all the way, so to speak, the shoulder, because I'm afraid it'll just rip the whole shoulder assembly of the white bot completely out. So let's take a look. So the forward motion gets up to there, and you get back to there. So that's kind of significant. You get outward, not really anything, because it just rips apart the shoulder assembly. You get a bicep swivel just above the elbow. And you get an elbow that reaches a little over 90 degrees, to be fair. You get a wrist swivel, and you get a thumb that hinges inward and outward, as well as at the primary knuckle. The fingers are individually articulated, and there's a pin at the base knuckle and then a pin at the secondary knuckle. I don't know if there is a little bit of a waist swivel. All right, this side. So you get out to there. It's like one click, and now we've pulled away. You can rotate up or back, and that's about the end of that. All right, let's readjust the camera. So we have hips that get you the full Van Damme, to be fair. They get you the full Monty, to be fair. You get a thigh swivel. You get one click of a knee. No, wait. No, you get 2 or 3 clicks of a knee this way. And I'm not really getting anything this way. Ankles. Ankle tilt up, fairly limited, down, and a rocker. So that's nice. On this side, ankle tilt up, down, and a rocker. You know what this thing is? I'm going to say it. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Don't you say it. Don't you say it. This thing is a train wreck. Am I right? Unfortunately, the size comparisons don't make this any better. The majority of Season 4 and beyond, actually Season 3 and beyond, but especially Season 4, when you start getting into Headmasters and Target Masters, the majority of those robots are larger in general. So when you scale your Masterpiece Train Combiner next to, say, Rodimus Prime, the leader of the Autobots, it just doesn't do the trick, I'm afraid. It looks like Ultra Magnus. Like, unfortunately, like this is just fail after fail after fail. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, you could arguably say that this fellow was the leader in Season 4 and beyond, specifically Headmasters and beyond, and I think that's debatable. I think we could have a discussion about it, but what we can have a discussion about is that it scales any better. No bueno. Let's move on to accessories, and I know it may have looked like the pelvis was broken from the previous because this part comes out. It just comes off. It connects securely, but with the tension, it does come off. This is one of the side pieces here. There's a peg that just pegs in to this port here on the side and sticks out a bit, which I'm not crazy about, but that's how that works. And then you have this one, similar situation. The port is right there. And dude, this thing doesn't even really stand without the top part on it. And then you just plug that in and you're good to go. And now I'll show you the weapons. He has a gun that we've already looked at and he holds it perfectly well. It's actually one of the better things about the set. He has a sword that we've already looked at that he holds perfectly well. And one thing about this is he's not actually having it plugged into his hand because the sword is not ambidextrous. It has to go in his right hand. But he can hold it just fine, as you can see, in his left hand with just tension, which is nice. Now, there he is holding his other sword, the translucent one, properly, and that's plugged into his hand and is solid as a rock as well. And it's the same mold, so you can gauge your judgment. He also holds his lightsaber perfectly fine. And once again, all these accessories we've looked at in the previous reviews of these trains, if you want more detail on them. Final thoughts wise, let's start with the negatives. And I don't know where to begin. I think the biggest negative, well, there's two biggest negatives here. One is that aesthetically it looks awful. The proportions look awful. It looks like a child in some weird way. A lot of that has to do with the thighs not being part of the waist bot. And I don't know why they're not, because they use parts forming in the waist spot. So I don't know why they didn't just add in thighs or try to come up with something to create a bigger thigh section. That's one of the biggest problems. If the legs and thighs were taller, I think aesthetically it would fix the proportions, but it wouldn't fix the second biggest flaw. The second biggest flaw is that it has zero function whatsoever. It can barely stand there. There wasn't one movement associated with any other movement that didn't untransform a component of it. And what I mean by that is any connection point. So if you move the shoulder, it's going to have a fail point at one bot or the other. Now, if you move something within the arm, like the elbow or the wrist, you might be fine. But when you start putting energy on multiple bots, fail. So it's really, basically, it's not really even posable. And if you do see it posed, it makes sense now why the poses look so weird. But if you do see it posed, there was an awful lot of work that went into cleaning that up and making sure it was presentable. And those two things are what makes this unequivocally outdated. I was saying on Patreon, TFC Hercules is a better combiner than this. If I were to do a comparison of the two, let alone what Zeta did with their train bots or moons, whatever they were calling themselves, TFC Hercules would smoke this thing in a Versus. And that's 10 years old, at least. Probably 11, closer to 11. And this thing is of today, and release date only. Positives. He holds his weapons well, and it does actually assemble easily. It just doesn't stay assembled very well. And then, of course, the trains look great, you know, when they're not in any sort of robot mode. Yeah, this thing is a disaster. It's a fail, and it is the biggest example that I can think of to demonstrate how I feel about Takara's hubris. They think they're so far above the game, and they're not. And they might realize that if they would climb down from their tower and get in the trenches with us for a minute and see where the game actually is. They're out of touch, they're out of style, and in my opinion, they're close to being out of time. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.